Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lines Injury Podcast. I am your host once again, Nicole Russo, filling in for Steven Andress, here alongside Will Carroll at Injury Expert on Twitter. Will, it's been 2 weeks since I've seen you. How's it been going?
Been going well. You know, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. Obviously, more injuries. And one of the things that we've talked about, I'm not sure if you were on here when we talked about it, but this year is different. We've known the last couple years with COVID being involved, obviously, it's really difficult to take a look at injuries and the pattern that it happens through the year. But we're really seeing now, it wasn't COVID. It was the changes in practice. We're seeing the shape of the season's injuries extend out. It used to be the midpoint was week 2. You had so many injuries in the preseason. Now we're seeing the midpoint looks like it's 6 or 7. We'll see how this goes. But this week has been no slowdown and a lot of big names. So let's jump right into it.
I was going to say, there's one that we're going to talk about that we actually got an update on maybe 30, 45 minutes before we started this podcast. So we'll hit on that in a little bit, but we're actually going to kick things off with the Los Angeles Rams. So quarterback Matthew Stafford is expected to clear concussion protocol by Friday, just in time for this weekend's matchup against the Saints. However, star wide receiver Cooper Kupp could be out for the rest of the season dealing with a high ankle sprain. And that is for sure something that we have touched on quite a bit in this podcast. I swear every week it is another high ankle sprain that we're seeing. Give us a little bit more insight into these two key injuries for a Rams team that is a 3-point dog against the Saints.
Yeah, with Stafford, he just couldn't make it back in time last week. After the concussion on Wednesday, there's simply not enough time in the week to come back through, at least in theory. We've seen that time frame, those days go through. What is day 0 for the concussion? What is day 1? But the Rams decided discretion, the better part of valor. He hasn't cleared protocol, not because he couldn't have cleared protocol, say Monday or Tuesday. It's just that he didn't. There's no reason to rush it. There's no game on Thursday. So they're just waiting. He hasn't yet officially cleared, which the last step is always the independent neurological consultant. But thus far, there's been no sign that he's not going to clear it, that he's not going to be out there. But he is definitely not going to have Cooper Kupp. Again, high ankle sprain. This isn't in the ankle. This is the ligament that goes between the two bones of the lower leg, the tibia and the fibula. It's a big, thick one. And when it tears, as it did with Kupp, it's devastating. We used to have to go in there, try to reconstruct it. It was almost always a career ender. But now we have a new technology called, the procedure itself is called tightrope. It uses something called internal brace, which is a Kevlar kind of, it looks like a shoelace kind of. Basically what they do is they drill through, pull that through, and then repair the ligament underneath it. The Kevlar is strong enough to hold so that you can get back on your feet quicker. What was once a 6 to 8 month recovery is now a 6 to 8 week recovery. However, 6 to 8 weeks is going to be into the playoffs, where unfortunately the Rams probably aren't going to be after the Super Bowl win. So I think Cooper Kupp, they're just going to hang it up for him, say, let's get ready for next year. For next year, for fantasy players, I think he's going to be drastically undervalued. Guys come back from this all the time. Tua Tagovailoa has tightropes in both ankles. He's been pretty good.
It is crazy to see those developments, but yeah, I am with you. I don't think that the Rams are going to be in that playoff contention field. So yeah, just rest him for the rest of the season. Next up, quarterback Justin Herbert for the Chargers took a helmet-to-helmet hit last weekend against the 49ers. He was taken out of the game briefly to be assessed for a concussion, but he seems to be cleared to play this weekend ahead of a big game against the Chiefs. The Chargers are currently 5-point home dogs in this matchup. What have you seen? What are your thoughts on this injury?
Yeah, let's be clear about this. He does not have a concussion. At least he wasn't diagnosed with one. I have to take the doctors at their words. They're the ones that were looking at him. They're the ones that got through medical school. So even though he was taken out, he was cleared to go back in. He played the rest of the time. All the next-gen stats showed he was moving well. He was throwing well. So we have to assume that, even though you got hit. Now, he was retested for a concussion on Monday. I talked to some sources. They said, that's just pretty much standard operating procedure at this point, given what we saw, again, with Tua Tagovailoa earlier this season and the changes in the protocol. They're just doing that secondary test to be precautionary. has had no problems, has had no symptoms, so he's going to play normally. The bigger question mark there is whether Keenan Allen, his speedy receiver, is going to be back. They've just been so banged up, and we talked about a lot of high ankle sprains. That turf at SoFi has just been a problem this year. And because two teams are playing on it, it's really worrisome. Talk to a source who says that they're looking at that. They're looking at MetLife. They've looked really hard at Lucas Oil. And even in Carolina, where they switched last year, they switched from grass, which, it's an outdoor stadium. They switched over because Charlotte FC, the MLS franchise, also owned by the Panthers owner, came in, and they were just like, it's going to be too much. The grass is going to get beaten down, so let's just put in turf. Now the NFL has taken a really hard look at it. It's tough to look at 11 weeks. It's just not a big enough sample size. But when you look back at last year, there really didn't seem to be a problem with the turf at SoFi last year. There are other places, Lucas Oil being the biggest. The old turf down in New Orleans. This is one I think is going to be the big off-season story is, are they going to push to put all stadiums back to grass? And if so, what do you do with the ones that just can't? Because there are going to be some. Yes,
I'm assuming, and I should know this, but are my Las Vegas Raiders, are not mine, but they're turf, yeah?
I think they have the roll-in grass, don't they?
Oh, wow. I was going to be shocked because grass doesn't like to live in our environments, but you might be right. That was the one I was going to check on. And you know what? If Las Vegas can do it, then these other cities can do it.
Yeah, it's done in a couple stadiums where, it was, what is Arizona now? State Farm Stadium, I think.
Yeah, State Farm, yep.
And it's one of the situations where they literally roll it in on a tray. I don't know if they have turf there. Also at Tottenham in London, where the NFL plays their off-season or in-season London games, that also has a roll-on, but that rolls on the turf. It's naturally a grass. It comes over it. I'm 99% sure there's a roll-on, roll-off, because doesn't UNLV play there as well?
They do, so I think you're right. It's got to be grass.
They play on turf.
Oh, they played on turf.
For UNLV, yeah. But I'm not 99% sure. I'm sure somebody in the comments will.
I was going to say, Google it. Somebody's going to tell us, how do you not know? Google it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a look at the other team in this matchup. And this is the game that we just got news on about 30 to 45 minutes ago. So the Kansas City Chiefs are dealing with some injuries to key players. Juju Smith-Schuster was ruled out of Sunday's game. He has been in concussion protocol after a controversial hit during the Jags game where it was deemed by the refs shoulder to shoulder, but then if you kind of look back on the replay video, it did look a little helmet to helmet. And also Mecole Hardman is on the IR with an abdominal injury and will likely miss 4 games. So I know this news is still a little fresh, but what are your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, with Juju, he was having symptoms yesterday, so there was worries about how quickly he was going to be able to go through the protocol. He's not going to be able to make it. He's still back at step 2 or 3, unclear from the outside. But concussions are really tough to read. Sometimes you have absolutely no symptoms even after being knocked unconscious. Sometimes you have symptoms on next to nothing. Sometimes they clear up in days. Sometimes they don't clear up. I know former manager Mike Matheny of the Cardinals and the Royals, to this day, has symptoms from a concussion he suffered more than 20 years ago. He can't look up and track fly balls. You can actually watch him in the dugout, and he's trained himself not to do it. So for Schuster, let's hope everything clears up by next week. For Hardman, on IR, out for the next couple of weeks. This is a pretty serious abdominal strain. It's in a bad location. You don't think about it, but how much you have to move and stabilize yourself and do all the motions that people have to do throughout a football game and practice. Just being able to stabilize yourself when blocking or getting hit, it's going to be really tough for that to heal up in a short period of time. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go out a few more weeks.
And just before we move on to the next segment, I did actually do a quick Google while we were chatting, and the Raiders do play on roll-on grass, so they're not on turf. You were correct. You can feel, vindicated that you were correct. But all right, we are going to move on here to the Cardinals, who head to Mexico for their Week 11 matchup against the 49ers. And we have a ton to talk about with their injury list. Both starting quarterback Kyler Murray and backup quarterback Colt McCoy are dealing with injuries and have been described as day-to-day by Cliff Kingsbury. He did say he's hoping to start at least one of them in this Week 11 matchup. And another player that is day-to-day is Hollywood St. Brown, who's been dealing with a broken foot, but seems to be trending in the right direction. Kingsbury said he might not make it this week, but he will be back sooner rather than later. And in addition to that, I told you we have a lot to talk about in this one. The Cardinals have lost one of their biggest offensive weapons, Zach Ertz, after suffering a knee injury against the Rams and being carted off the field. So we've got a lot to talk about for this one.
Yeah, lots to talk about there. The simple one is Marquise Brown. He's got to be able to come back, be able to make all his motions. We'll see whether or not that happens this week. They're going to make that final determination on Friday. We don't know what that is as we're recording, but we should know well before game time, actually well before you got to get everything in on Sunday. He's been out with that broken foot. The foot has healed up. The question is whether he's functional. They're basically going to do the same thing they would do in a pregame, run him through a series of route trees, make sure that foot holds up. Whether he makes the trip or not is going to be determined by that. With Murray, couldn't play last week because of the hamstring. He's obviously a fast twitch player. He's got to be able to make the motions, escape, do those spinning, jumping moves that he does. One of the most athletic players in the NFL, and a significant hamstring strain. We'll see whether it's healed up. He is moving, he is running, but he hasn't done the full and final test on that again here Friday as we're recording. Colt McCoy just got banged up. I mean, unfortunately, he took a lot of hits. The one that really got him slammed his knee down from behind, sort of a quick kneel down, and those knee pads don't do a lot for those. So his is more of a question of pain tolerance than function. He can get out there and move. It's just still a little bit swollen and sore. And finally on Zach Ertz, they haven't ruled him out for the season yet. He is on IR. It is a significant knee. They haven't determined whether or not they're going to have surgery yet. I'm told there was significant swelling, so they're probably waiting on a secondary MRI to make that final determination. But just a devastating series of things that happened when you take a look at the Cardinals, what they're going to have to face this week. Add in, they're going to be essentially on the road, one of these neutral site games. And a lot of people forget Mexico City is really, really high. It's higher than the Mile High City in Denver, and we know how many problems people have going there. They'll get gas because there's just not as much oxygen. Well, there is not nearly as much oxygen in Mexico City. It's been a problem time and time again. You'll get over fatigued, and there's just not enough oxygen to function, and you see a lot of muscle strains.
Man, the people in the comments are going to be going off because not only did we not know about the grass, but I accidentally called Hollywood St. Brown, thinking Amon-Ra St. Brown. So,
well, there's so many St. Browns.
I was going to say,
you know.
I'm jet lagged. I just got back from Iceland yesterday, so give me a break, everyone. But no, yeah, this is a ton of difficult injuries for these Arizona Cardinals. And Murray has said that he's been feeling better, but also that his style of play makes it tough to return and play through a hamstring injury because we know he's such an explosive runner. So definitely going to be interested. One of those things that we're going to have to closely monitor when it comes to this Arizona Cardinals game. Exactly.
It's not the same injury, but if you think back to last year when Lamar Jackson was out for so many weeks, it's the style, it's the way those two play. So his was a knee, this is a hamstring, but it shows you just how tough it is for one of these athletic players to go out. Though research shows, contrary to popular belief, mobile quarterbacks like Murray and Jackson do not get injured more.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, that's a good little tidbit for the listeners to know. Next up, we've got the Eagles, who not only lost their first game of this season last weekend, but in addition lost one of their star tight ends, Dallas Goedert, who hurt his shoulder during a fumble against that matchup against the Commanders. It looks like he will come back at some point this season, but could be out for at least 4 games. He is now on the IR list. The Eagles are still 6.5-point road favorites in their matchup against the Colts. So give us a little bit more insight into this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it happened on such a controversial play. He got a face mask that they missed. Because of that, he fell awkwardly. Because of that awkward fall, he ended up spraining his shoulder. And it's significant enough that he's on the IR. his question mark is going to be whether it's going to be 6 weeks, whether it's going to be 8 weeks. How deep into the playoffs is this going to go? Because he is a big target for Jalen Hurts. That offense is going to miss him. They don't have somebody that really fills in that spot. I forget the number 2, but he's more of a blocker. He's actually in a lot of 12 personnel packages. So this is going to hurt them a lot. I think they're going to have to go more to Kenneth Gainwell, maybe slide him out rather than just using him as the passing back. But they've got a number of receivers they can go. This is a team, especially for a team like the Eagles, that's making this run through the season and then have the quirky loss. This is where you start to see how deep they are. This is where you start to see if they can accept one of these injuries that are going to inevitably happen during the season and make it through. So how they adjust, and then, who knows with Indianapolis? They came in and had the win last week. This is not a good team, but neither are the Raiders. We're going to figure out whether the Colts suddenly got good under Jeff Saturday, or whether or not this is a Raiders team that's just that bad that they would lose even to the Colts. Matt Ryan is back, and he's got a bad shoulder. It's just going to be a mess. So this should be a get healthy game for the Eagles. We'll see on Sunday.
And to finish things off for today's podcast, we've got the Washington Commanders, who have won 4 of their last 5 games. And there was early optimism that pass rusher Chase Young would return from IR for this game against the Houston Texans. Now, Young has been dealing with a knee injury and is trending in the right direction. But Ian Rappaport did say that week 12 might be a more realistic target for his return. Now, the pass rush has been able to hold up without him, but obviously his return would definitely help things move along as this team is trending in such a good direction. Even with his uncertain return, the Commanders are favored by a field goal in this matchup. Do you think we're going to see him in week 11 or week 12?
I think it's going to be week 12. I just don't think they got enough out of him this week. They're still figuring out how to keep him healthy. He's still getting a little bit of inflammation in there. That's not unusual. It's just kind of the ramping up process. One of the things that people have to remember is there's not just the medical rehab, which takes 6 to 9 months. There's the getting back into your football shape. We're seeing that with Odell Beckham. He's been cleared to play, and everybody's like, oh, he's about to sign. Then he decided, no, I'm not going to. I think he just wants to be in 100% shape, that he's not going to have to go in there to a team and run routes and practice generally. He wants to come in and just play. I can see why people would do that. You see players do that all the time to avoid camp. He's just trying to avoid practice. Cue the Allen Iverson sound effect. So it's one of those things for Chase Young. I think they're not comfortable with it. They're on a good run, like you said. Amazing how that happens when you dump Carson Wentz, who is healthy but not going to take over anytime soon. So for Chase Young, closer. And with this division, there's still a chance this could be a playoff team, which is kind of crazy to think about.
I was going to say, I was very low on the Washington Commanders every week. My co-host on Beat the Closing Line was backing them every single week, and I thought, you're absolutely insane. But Eli deserves major credit because they pulled it off. But all right, everyone, thanks for joining us today on the Injury Podcast. Will, thanks for letting me step in as host once again. If you are betting this weekend, then good luck with those bets. We'll see you next time.